a truly collaborative environment requires a certain degree of intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, both having done therapy and run groups and all sorts of things, I can say intimacy is something people are quite afraid of.
Yeah.
And depending upon your background, you can be a little bit afraid of or right down the line to terrified about.
Mhm.
So even in couple relationships and all, real intimacy can be experienced as scary. So many people will block a group from growing or developing. We call that control, or in some other cases, storming. But it's a way to block interpersonal relations from developing because we're afraid of being swallowed by the others or abandoned by the others.
ALFA Relations, driving change forward.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the next episode of ALFA Relations. We have a very special guest with us today. He is a mentor. He is an instructor, a wizard of his own craft, which we shall explain. It is my friend and yours, everyone, Dr. Timothy Farmer. Give it up. Give it up. Give it up.
Yay.
Let's go.
Welcome, Dr. Farmer.
Can I just add that they call you a mentor when you get past 70?
Oh, well, hey.
Instead of saying he's old, you just say he's a mentor.
I like that. I like that. How are you, my good sir?
I'm fine today, thank you.
Good. We're glad you're here, that you were able to join us. And here we are in the world of virtual reality, which you and I and everyone else have been getting quite acquainted with,
Mhm.
with the ups and the downs, working on Zoom and other platforms as well. And it's just nice. I think so far so good, considering the fact that we've been able to adapt from what we were doing just 8 months ago
Yeah.
in person, and as to where we've come now. And I just wanted to start off by asking you, what have you been feeling, or what have you been thinking rather, having gone through that transition from in-person learning to online?
Well, I had avoided online because I wasn't sure I could fit the format of it. I just wasn't sure. But like many things in life, I was sort of forced into it. And it's turned out, in my opinion, to be very good for me and for my students. I kept my normal pace. I have a tendency to go over notes, tell a story, give an example, discuss the matter, move on to some more notes, and all the time asking students if they have questions, queries, challenges. Sometimes they have challenges. And it turns out, I think, that my personal format fits this online learning quite well. It helps that I know the material so that I'm casual with the material, comfortable. It feels fluid to me, so it's easy for me to bring up my stories, etc. So my answer is I went into it with some reluctancy, but seems my natural format fits it.
Awesome.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. So Dr. Farmer, here you are. And what we'd like to do at the start with all our guests is just for you to take a moment just to tell us a bit about who you are, where you're coming from, and how all of that has led to what we're doing now with AHSC and human relations.
Wow.
It's going to be a big one.
I mean, you only give me an hour. Okay. Well, I grew up in the United States, came to Canada when I was 19. So I've been in Canada longer than I lived in the States. Originally went to Montreal. I didn't even know they spoke French in Montreal. I was a typical arrogant, ignorant American. I didn't even know that.
In for a surprise.
Yes, I was. Yes. Actually, a silly, funny story is one day I was speaking to a man, and I just said, because my mother would do this as a boy, she would speak to us. She knew about 10 or 15 words in French, that's all. But she would say things like merci or il n'y a pas de quoi or something. And so one day I said thank you to a man, but I said merci, not thinking about anything. I'd only been in the country 3 or 5 days, and he broke out in French. And I went inside my head, oh my God, don't do that again. Because of course, I had no idea what he was saying. And I guess I said merci pretty good. I mean, it's hard to mess up that word, but I guess I said well enough that he thought I actually spoke French. So I realized you can't fool around with that here, that you'll get in trouble. So then I met a young French Canadian, a lovely young woman, and we got married, had children. I went to university. I actually did my bachelor's at what is now Concordia, but in those days it was Loyola College. That was before it became Concordia. And then I went to, I worked for a while, and then I got my master's degree at the University of Vermont, in Vermont, obviously. And then eventually moved to Ottawa, got a divorce, remarried Christina, who I refer to frequently in my courses, my wife. And she had 3 children. So, well, actually, both of us have lost a child.
I'm sorry.
When we hooked up, she had 2 children. She had just 6 months earlier lost her son in a car accident. He was a passenger in a car and was killed. So we've been together since the late 90s.
Wow. As old as us then.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
That would be as old as us, since we were all born at the end of the 90s.
You could, no, sure, you could easily be children or grandchildren. My oldest grandchild is 14, so he's probably about 10 years younger than some of you. Anyways, and then I did my PhD at the University of Ottawa, where I worked as a counselor. Then I opened up a private practice. Then I started to teach at Concordia part-time and have my private practice. I did that for many years. And then when my daughter died in another car accident, totally separate from Christina's, having nothing to do with her son's death at all, I stopped my private practice. I found I was too emotional. And so I just taught, and now I'm teaching. I'm at what is called a full-time part-time, or a senior part-time. I'm at the top of the seniority, not the very top, but near the top of the seniority. In our department, I usually get the courses I want, and I've continued to teach into my 70s because it's good for me. It's good for my mind. I hope it's good for my students. I hope so.
I would agree.
And Christina takes care of our newest grandson, Kingsley, who anyone who takes a course knows about. If you guys are lucky, I'll give you a few Kingsley stories, because he has such wonderful, wonderful, cute, silly little boy stories that he does. And now this online is working very well because I can stay home with Christina and Kingsley. So I like that.
That is very true. That is something, And I wanted to ask you, so, I mean, you've had a wide journey, a lot of different institutions and working in counseling. But what I'd like to explore with you is AHSC, Applied Human Sciences. How long have you been involved in the department?
Well, I took my first courses, I think the first course I took, was 1974.
Wow.
And I took a course, really it was the very first thing I had to do was a 2-week workshop, residential workshop up north at a place called Sun Valley. And so you would go up there for 2 weeks and study in a residential environment, study human relations, group dynamics, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I studied that, and Hedley Dimmick was there. Hedley Dimmick is the man who created this department in 1968, is my belief. He opened up this department, and it's sort of a combination in between psychology and sociology. It's really, really social psychology, people in groups, people interacting in groups, and so on, which I always found of everything. I took psychology courses and I took sociology courses, and I was always in my mind most interested about people in groups. I found that fascinating. So that's the first time. And then I continued to take courses, these workshops. There'd be 14 days, 15 days, 14 days, 10 days, things like that, on and on. And one of the professors who's still around, Ray Cass, was actually, I worked with her
Wow.
as her TA. I was Ray Cass's TA.
No
I
kidding.
think in 75 or 76, I can't remember. I was her TA.
Wow.
And just for our viewers out there, would you mind just telling us in a sentence or two who Ray Cass is?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ray Cass, she's the senior most professor. She's even, okay. Anyways, she's senior in many ways. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough.
And she started with courses. She had I think she had a bachelor's or master's degree in social work, and then started to take courses with Hedley, and was graduated from our program somewhere in there. I really am not sure. I think she started taking the courses back in 68 or so. I really am not sure exactly. That would have been, I think, the first courses. And she, I always called her the princess of the department. That is, she was the Hedley superstar. Ray caught on to this kind of teaching, this kind of work almost instantly, and was, well, kind of a superstar. Everybody liked her. All the students admired her once she began to teach. She was just very good at all of this work, and a good mentor, and a good inspiration for everyone. And she's still around now, but she only teaches one course. I'm not even sure. I don't think she's retired, because they would have announced it. I think she's still teaching one course
In the masters,
department?
or yeah.
in the department, probably at the master's level would be my guess.
Okay.
With COVID and all the rest, I've lost some contact with her, but
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure she's still around teaching one course. And Ray has contributed a tremendous amount of time, energy, and money, and that's a biggie,
Mhm.
to the department to help enhance the department and make it available to students who may not be able to afford things, etc. So her commitment has been quite powerful, a major influence after Hedley left.
So we've heard, definitely. And
Yeah.
knowing too that, I mean, one of our most significant textbooks that we use, is by her right there.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's
That's
it.
right. You do have a textbook.
Holy
by her.
Grail. Yeah, no,
That's
definitely.
true.
It's come in handy on more than one occasion in more than
Yep.
one course.
Yeah, actually, because I was actually just about to say the same thing Alan was about to say. Like we have the book from Ray Cass of theories of small group development, I believe, and I think I got it from actually your course, and we sort of explore we explore Schultz and Lacourcière and Tuckman, and before coming into this the meeting, we were sort of like talking about different topics, and we sort of came across Gibb, in which Alan said that you actually knew. So I was sort of just interested to sort of
Jack Gibbs, yes.
yeah, Jack Gibbs.
Yeah, I didn't know him intimately. I knew him. I met him. I've spoken with him. I was never at his house for supper, but I knew him and his wife.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, back in, I think it's the summer of 75, but I can't be sure.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Gibbs came to Concordia and gave a weekend experiential workshop based on his theory. And what you guys call the G Lounge now, in those days was called the Gedangen Lounge, which now we can understand why it was easily changed to the G Lounge, since Gedangen is a heck of a word to get out.
Yeah.
And he had 150 people there.
Wow.
In that lounge, so it was packed with everybody. No chairs. We all sat on the floor. Of course, that's just in the hippie days too. So that wasn't a big deal. And it turned out by sheer coincidence, I ended up in a group with his wife. So she was a member of our group. And he broke us up into groups, and we went through a series of, don't ask me the exercises, I cannot remember. But exercises and other activities, including just free discussion, based on his theoretical outline. He presented the outline to us, the Tory. Trust, openness, realization, and interdependence. And it went for me very well. However, I would say out of the 150, there were about 10 people who were very disturbed and wanted a sit down in your chair, get on the blackboard, paper and pencil, 3-day course.
Okay.
And he didn't do that, and he wasn't going to do that. And at one point, I don't know the day, I'm going to say Saturday afternoon. It started on a Friday. Saturday afternoon, there was a real revolution in there. For like I said, about 10 people.
Wow.
It was a small group. And one man who had a very loud, aggressive voice. And I really had some fear that there was going to be a fist fight. I mean, he was very demanding. And I think Jack just basically said he'd give him back his money and he could go home. Which didn't seem to satisfy the guy, because he, whatever was going on with the guy. So what it was is that Jack did not provide us enough structure. So if you guys think in 232, I don't give you a lot of structure, I give you 10 times the structure Jack gave us. He really gave you very little structure, and you had to fill it in. So if you had any paranoia in your background, it could easily inflame it. It could just easily go, this is a trick. There's something going on here. What's this about? Who are these people? Whatever. And I really think that the man that was so aggressive, I could understand some people upset they wanted more structure, but he was right on the edge of out of control. And I really think he may have had some sort of mental problem, or was paranoid. I don't know. He just couldn't stand it. He just couldn't stand that free flow, open, trust atmosphere. He didn't trust. And I think eventually on Saturday, my memory is that he just disappeared. I think Jack gave him his money and he went home, and that was exactly what happened. And Saturday night and Sunday turned out to be much more pleasant. Friday night was pleasant. Saturday morning was pleasant. It was really Saturday afternoon that happened. But overall, most of us really enjoyed it. And if you are able to feel the trust and build the trust and explore the trust and then become open, and so it was a wonderful experience.
That's awesome.
That's great. You mentioned that it was sort of more of like a hippie time back then. How was the 232 course back then compared to like today?
Oh, much more hippie. Much more hippie. So I will edit some things, I'm telling you now. Because
redact a few things, eh?
Redact, yeah. Those things that are blanked out for a reason.
Fair enough.
But first off, in those days that you're referring to, the 70s, actually 230 and 232 were one course. That's what it was.
Oh, okay.
So the 230 about interpersonal communication
Mm-hmm.
and 232 groups. That was one course. That's what it was.
Okay.
They're now two separate courses completely.
Yeah.
But in those days, they were one 6-credit course. And without joking, and I'm not, we all sat on cushions on the floor. Nobody sat in chairs. If you had if someone really wanted to sit in a chair, no one would block them or refuse to let them do it. There was no, but that didn't happen often. But most of the time, if that happened, it happened because they had a bad back or something, and they needed to sit upright, and sitting on cushions or beanbags, that was the biggie. Big bangs or cushions was just, they
Beanbag.
couldn't do it
Wow.
because of their back.
Yeah.
So it was a much more intimate, interpersonal. There were no computers, there were no tables. Mostly no chairs, except for once in a while. And we let the students, unless it was something, outrageous, we let the students run the show, and then we would just reflect what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And
It was
so,
in the 232 working in task groups, correct?
right, in both the
Okay, in
230
both.
and 2. Remember, they're one course
Right. Okay. Combination.
combination. So, as a simple example, I was running one. Now, we also taught downtown. We taught on Bishop Street, across from the Hall building. There was a house there,
Mm-hmm.
and that house was dedicated to our department. And so, when you went inside, it was a house. So they had converted living rooms into offices, and kitchens into offices, and so on, and upstairs bedrooms into meeting rooms and things like that. There were no beds, of course. There were cushions, and like I said, cushions, beanbag chairs, and a few upright 4-legged chairs, but not too many. So one time I was breaking my group up. I was teaching. First course I taught was 1979. I told that to a course once about 5 years ago, and one young lady went, "Oh!" I said, "Yes, I'm that old." It's true. So I taught a course 1979. So this would have been like 81 or something, 82. And I broke the class into its groups, and then I was about to go up with the group I was in. I didn't have so many TAs in those days. I was about to go up to the group I was in, and somebody stopped me about something. So I ended up getting up there about 3 or 4 minutes late because I was stopped by a student. And when I got in, everybody was getting up to leave the room. And I just walked in the door, and I just looked. I said, "What's happening?" "Oh, we're all going next door to the restaurant." And I said, "Oh, how did this happen?" "Oh, some young man said, 'Oh, well, we all decided that's what we wanted to do.'" So I said, "Well, I'm not trying to stop you, but I do want to slow you down for a minute. I just walked in the room, so I know I haven't agreed, but can we just review what happened here? So how did we get to this decision?"
Mm-hmm.
So there was a short discussion led by a particularly young man and 2 women. Everybody had decided, everybody wanted. They couldn't talk in this room. It was too confining. It wasn't safe. It wasn't, I don't know, whatever. Just ramble on and on and on. So we teach about counterdependency is part of the course. And I said, to myself, my God, this is counterdependency in spades. It's like got neon lights on it. Okay. So I said, well, if that's what people want to do, let's go. So I'm okay with it. So we went next door. We ended up at a long table. There were about 10 of us in the group. I can't remember exactly, around 10. We ended up at a long table. It was, in those days, it was a smoked meat restaurant. And we had trouble it took a while to get served and everything to take place. So we were over there, I would say a good 20 minutes before we were being fed. And you couldn't hear people at the other end. The waiters were still talking to the people. I mean, the waiters had no sense this was a class. So what did you want mustard on your smoked meat? Blah, blah, blah. So it was quite disturbing. And then at one point, I used a spoon and I hit my glass, and I got everybody's attention. And I said, I just want to remind us, why is it we came here again? Because we couldn't hear one another.
Good question.
Mm-hmm.
At which point the whole class, everybody burst out laughing because you couldn't hear anything. And except me, you heard me because I quieted everybody down. Even the waiters took the hint to shut up. And so everybody started to laugh and so on. And then we used that, and it was a wonderful experiential activity that they accidentally designed for themselves to experience counterdependence. And the real reason that they did this is they were trying to take power away from me as the leader, the teacher and the leader, and run the class the way they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I invited them. I said, let's do it and let's learn from it. It made absolutely no sense to me to go to the restaurant. No sense at all. Conversations like you can't talk in these rooms and that kind of they were perfect. It's as simple as it became a wonderful learning experience for the students about counterdependence and how groups try, if you give them elbow room, they try to steal the power, which can be great. A smart leader can let them steal so much power.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, it was a wonderful learning experience, but we let the students have much more to say about what happened in their groups, much more. Okay, than we do today.
Mm-hmm. With all your your years of experience with like groups and like group development, what would you say are like some of the essential parts of like for like any group or team wanting to be like effective in their process?
Well, I have several things. There are many things that affect the group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A sense of belonging or a sense of trust or a sense of safety is key to having a collaborative group environment.
Mm-hmm.
We like to teach collaborative groups. We consider them to be the most productive, but they aren't necessarily always the best. Depends upon the time, place, and situation. Emphasize collaborative work together because experience, research, you obtain the best product from a collaborative work environment. However, it does take more energy and more time and a certain degree of trust, etc. And it's not appropriate for every situation. It's just not. There are some situations where you just don't have the time, or you need a certain kind of expertise, or there's lots of things that might affect not wanting to be collaborative. But when you can, that's a good way to go. Many people who get in charge of groups become first line managers, etc. I think it's all about task. We have a task. And of course, if you're in any industry of any kind, you have a task to accomplish, of course. But if all you think about is task and not much else, you really usually don't obtain the best product. You can obtain a product, but not the best product, because usually it's driven by the vision of the leader, and the leader by themselves is very unlikely to be able to create as dynamic and powerful an outcome as all the people put together. That would be possible, but very unusual. But many leaders like that because they feel in charge and because they've never been trained to anything else. Also, some people like task because a truly collaborative environment requires a certain degree of intimacy. And I can tell you, both having done therapy and run groups and all sorts of things, I can say intimacy is something people are quite afraid of.
Yeah.
And depending upon your background, you can be a little bit afraid of or right down the line to terrified about.
Mhm.
So even in couple relationships and all, real intimacy can be experienced as scary. So many people will block a group from growing or developing. We call that control, or in some other cases, storming. But it's a way to block interpersonal relations from developing because we're afraid of being swallowed by the others or abandoned by the others. So it becomes a real issue. So there are a few things like that that get in the way of a group developing and making use of itself. A real good group leader makes use of the group and it as its major resources.
Mm-hmm.
And the more diverse the group, the more you have African and Hispanic and Arabic and Anglo-Saxons. And so the more you have a diverse background of people, the harder that is. But on the other hand, if you're able to integrate that in a true and sincere way, usually the better product you end up with. You get a very dynamic product, which is considered many factors that you by yourself would not have thought of.
Mm-hmm. That's really
Have I answered your question?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, just to deviate a little bit about groups, we just wanted to talk about counseling, as you've mentioned multiple times that you have done. But we wanted to put a little bit of a twist on it. So, for viewers who may not know or who haven't had you, you are visually impaired. So, what has counseling been like for you not being able to pick up on nonverbal cues and communication?
Well, first off, of course, everybody who comes to see me knows that. I announce it as a teacher the first day of
Mhm,
class.
Mm-hmm.
I make it clear to people so that
mhm,
people understand um, that if you're shaking your head, yes, I don't see it. So
mhm,
it's not helping. As Alan is my TA this year, he'll notice that I'm frequently saying things and then I stop and say, are people understanding this? And Alan's saying, yes, they're all shaking their head. Yes, Dr. Farmer. But
mhm.
I can't see that. So it's online and it's even worse. I can't see it.
Yeah.
So I my I've adapted, as all good counselors will, good
Mhm,
therapists will, my approach to my personal point of view, but not it's not. I'm guided by minds much brighter than my own. I'm guided by them very much, but
mhm,
adapted it. And part of the adaptation is that I look for tone of voice, and a big thing I look for is inconsistency. I call it the rub, R-U-B, rub.
okay.
What I look for is when somebody's explaining something to me and something they've told me in the past, rather it be 10 minutes ago or 2 days ago, 2 weeks ago,
Mhm,
or 2 months ago for that matter. But I, and what they're telling me now don't match.
Mm-hmm.
I call that the rub. And that's almost always where you find the truth. Almost always the truth is in the rub.
Hmm.
Why are they telling me how happy they are to be married to this person? But a couple weeks ago, they were talking to me about wanting a divorce.
mhm.
And now that's never happened. It doesn't happen that boldly, but that's an example.
Right.
And then I would bring that up. I'd say, well, that's really an interesting contrast. How, what does that mean? And then they have to explore. Well, they have ambiguous feeling. Okay, what is that about? And when you go down, then you find out what they're really there for.
Mm-hmm.
They themselves are often not clear.
Mm.
So it's in the rub that you frequently, it's not the only way, it's not a magic way. It's a good way for me, since I can't see their facial expressions and so on.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good way for me and anyone to catch inconsistencies, because in the inconsistency, it's is a truth. It's not exactly the same, but sort of like a free association with Freud.
Mhm.
You know, up, down, boy, girl, mother, devil. I don't know, whatever, something. What mother, devil? Where did that come? So that would be a kind of an inconsistency. Well, what I'm saying is not dislike that. It's not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not throwing words at them, but it's not it's consistent with that concept of something out of line with something else.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have to explain what the out of line is. Why would you say mother devil? What does that mean? Up and down, everybody says it. Mother, father, everybody says it. Whatever. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
those are, someone says to you, they're 24 years old, and they say that they cannot remember a single incident, not one single thing below the age of 9. The first time they remember anything is when they were 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know about you, but that doesn't make sense to me. And so I did not jump on it. I said, that's a bit unusual. And then you wait, and weeks later, you get a little bit more and a little bit more until you can finally say, that's interesting that you can't remember anything below the age of 9, nothing at all. And yet at the age of 10, you can remember telling your mother you wish you were dead. Wow, that's an unusual, like, to come from nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
You must have remembered something at the age of 10. And then that led to slowly the person remembering traumatic incidences and so on, which of course we could all guess. Anybody would guess were purposely being blanked out because they were too traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, you have to wait until something comes up that you can go, this does not match that. What is going on here?
Yeah.
Okay, that's my answer.
Well, with that in mind of adaptation and stuff, you must have had to adapt in all of your aspects of life with, the transition to visual impairment. So what has that been like? Or what was that like initially?
Well, I did and didn't. I lost my eyesight at the age of 7.
Mm-hmm.
So although I did have to adapt after that, I actually can remember at the age of 7 playing baseball out in the back alley behind our house in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
where an older boy would hit the ball up and hit pop-ups, and then I would catch them and throw it back to him, and he'd hit pop-ups and so on. So I can remember actually doing that and being able to see, find, and catch the ball. I can remember doing that. And then a few weeks later, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't see the ball. It just, I could hear him hit it. It went on the air. I didn't see it, and it just disappeared. It just vanished from my visual range. I would say most of my adaptation in my youth was quite negative. I went through a lot of, there's a term in Freud called reaction formation, where you take on the opposite characteristic of what you really feel. So I wanted to play sports, but I couldn't really play sports. So I became a very aggressive basketball player, because I really couldn't play very well. Sometimes my friends would call it mugger ball, because I would sort of mug them to get the ball.
Now this I would have loved to see.
Well, I was just a skinny little kid, but so I I tried to deal with my sense of not being able to keep up and do things like other people by overdoing it in one silly way or absurd way or another. So in my youth, I think that I did not, I mean, it was my way to adapt. And if you had asked me about it, I would have told you, no, I'm not doing that. But looking back as a grown man, of course, I could see I was. So I just didn't want to feel left out. I didn't want to feel inferior. I didn't want to feel disabled. So I put myself out there and I would say in a fair amount of potentially dangerous situations because I was insistent to do it. I was insistent. Now, I did lose my eyesight slowly throughout my life. I see 100 times worse than I did now then. So now in the last 3 years, I've started to use a cane. And the cane is twofold. The one is to warn you. They call it a signal cane. It's to tell you, if you see me, I'm not going to get out of your way. If you see me with the cane, it's a hint. If you don't move, we're going to collide. Or a cane crossing a street. Car, I probably don't see you coming down the street. So if you don't stop, there's there's going to be a problem. So, and I also use it for me. On many occasions, I've tapped something before I hit it. I have to slow down my pace now because I used to run, but I wasn't very good. Well, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is I can now walk faster than I can see. So I can get to objects before I'm able to see them. Most of the time, I'm one step away. I'm 6 inches and I see it, if it's big enough. But not always, and sometimes. So having the cane helps. It reaches the object even before I see the object. So it's good. I do still sometimes step into holes and so on. Yes, there are some silly stories about that, but anyways, you just do. When I'm at home, I don't need it. When I'm in a familiar environment, I don't use my cane at all. And my family know not to leave shoes in the middle of the floor or boxes in the doorway or something that I'm surely going to fall over. Only my grandson doesn't understand that, but that's okay. But on the street, I need my cane because you just never know what you might run into.
Yeah,
very true. But in my experience, Dr. Farmer, I mean, having worked for you for a bit now, I got to be honest, for all our viewers out there, when you're walking around a room, I mean, sometimes you come in and you bringing us coffee. I'm just like, I got to ask myself sometimes, I'm completely serious. I'm like, is he pulling our leg this entire time? I've seen you go up to the blackboard as well. You start drawing out models depending on maybe it's like a group theory at hand. It's very amazing.
Well, I'm very lucky. As far as bringing in coffee, that's really not much of a trick. When I'm making the coffee, I ask the person to help me and put all the coffee in the tray and tell me what order it's in, so I know who has what coffee. Double cream and sugar, black. Like they tell me all of that, and I just remember it. So when I come, I know whose coffee is whose. That's relatively easy. And they help me do all of those things. But what I'm very lucky about is I have a very powerful visual memory. Now, that sounds strange, and it is a little strange. My visual memory does not necessarily represent the truth, but it represents what I think is in front of me. So if I make up, and I have made up many diagrams for theories that are not part of the theory, but I made up the diagram to help explain the theory to my students. So I have Gibbs is one of them, actually. I've created a diagram in my head. I can see the pictures in my head. I can see the street in my head. I can see it at this instant. I easily see our classrooms. I see the street in front of Concordia.
Mm-hmm.
I can see the whole campus in my head at this exact instant.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm lucky that I have that ability. So it looks like I'm doing miracles, but really I know what's happening around me. The thing that catches me is if you put a chair like in the doorway of the classroom or something, that I might trip over because I don't expect any chairs to block my way.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's not part of my picture. So but drawing diagrams on the blackboard, those are diagrams in my head. I'm drawing the picture in my head.
Mm.
That makes sense.
That's what I do. So I'm very lucky to have that ability to visualize things, understand what I'm visualizing, and make use of it.
That's quite something.
Mm-hmm.
Again, still, I mean, seeing you in action sometimes, I'm just like, wow. No, it is. Especially, I remember.
Now, I will tell you one
it.
more thing about my vision. I have no central vision in either eye.
Mm-hmm.
So if I stare straight at something, I don't see it at all.
Mm-hmm.
I do have peripheral vision out of the corners of my eyes. And I have, the term is islands, like Bermuda or Cuba or something, islands of sight.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a couple at the top of my eye, on the side of my eye, at the bottom of my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any, like where your eyes meet your nose, I don't have any islands of sight there, but above, on the right, out to the sides. And so it's actually strange that I could be looking straight at Alan and actually not see him at all.
Mm-hmm.
And Lucas could be walking in the door and I see the movement. I may not know it's Lucas, but I'll see movement. And I'll turn to that movement to see who's coming. Now, of course, it's ridiculous because if I look straight at Lucas, I won't see him either. But also, if Lucas always wears a red shirt or always wears a plaid shirt or always wears, I don't know, something outstanding,
Mm-hmm.
then I'll know it's Lucas, not because I see him, but because I see that color. And I know that Lucas is my TA in 230. And this is 2:30, and he hasn't been here. Then all of a sudden I see the red shirt, and I go, "Oh, hi, Lucas." Well, Lucas thinks I see him, but actually I just saw a flash of red as he walked in the door.
Well, that's good, but there's a funny thing. I think you have the wrong guy, Dr. Farmer, who walked in because
Who's Lucas?
Oh,
Lucas.
What?
Lucas is Luca.
Luca. Well, Luca.
Luca.
See, I'm very good at catching your red shirt, but I Luca, I'm sorry, Luca.
Don't worry.
It's all good.
That's going to stick with him for a while now, Dr. Farmer. But
Luca, I'm sorry.
I do have another question I'd like to ask you. I mean, I think I brought this up with you sometime last year. But just to go over it again, would you consider yourself an intuitive person?
Not really.
No? How come?
Well, I don't really believe in intuition as it's stated. I don't believe in it. I do believe there's something that looks. My wife is wonderful. If you saw, you would say she's the most intuitive person you ever met, but it's not true. She's the most perceptive person you've ever met. I think what we call intuition is very, very often we pick up little cues. Now, I'll explain. My wife grew up in Colombia till the age of 8. She only spoke Spanish, no other language, and she grew up in an entirely different culture, entirely. Mm-hmm. At the age of 8, her mother and her brother and sister and her all came to Canada. Her father was supposed to come after. He actually died and didn't make it, but he was supposed to follow up. When she arrived here, her family refused to speak any Italian or Spanish. She did not speak Spanish, although she could recognize Spanish.
Mhm.
And she did speak, but they refused because they wanted her to learn English. Well, that really was torment for her. And schools in those days did not have the kind of English second language and all the sensitivity that we have today. She was
Mhm.
basically thrown into a classroom where everybody spoke English. She spoke none at all, and she had to make do. And that was terribly difficult.
Mhm.
So she learned to be perceptive. She had to pick up on tone of voice, visual cues, et cetera, et cetera. So she learned very quickly as a survival technique to pick up subtle visual cues from teachers or other students so that she could try to figure out what was going on around her, since she did not understand and nobody was slowing it down to explain it to her. So she became so perceptive. May I tell you a story?
Yeah,
Sure, go right
of
for it.
course.
So I was doing testing for the city of Ottawa years ago, as it was as my profession, and we were looking for people who had disabilities to try to get them into specialized programs so that they could get employed. I was not truthfully looking for people who were mentally challenged, although I did find some, nor was I looking for people who had psychiatric disorders, although I did find some. I was looking for people who might have dyslexia and dysgraphia and so on, learning type disabilities, and that's why they had so much trouble in school.
Mhm.
Anyways, I was testing this one lady, and she was taking so long to do the testing. I mean, in slow motion was practically backwards. So Christina said to me, because she was helping me, "Do you think she could be doing this on purpose?" And I said, "No, this is a learning disability, honey. This is no. What makes well?" I picked up a kind of a strange sort of smile on her face that I didn't like, and I think she's doing this on purpose. And I said, "Well, that's why they hire me, because you can't just look at somebody and come up with it." However, I did follow through with some other tests, such as the MMPI, looking for psychiatric dysfunction.
Mhm.
And oh my God, she scored as a psychopath
Oh.
and
Wow.
as a liar. And I think as a liar in all three, they have 3 liar scales, as I remember. Maybe I'm wrong. She scored as a liar in all 3 liar scales. And so, anyways, and I went back to Christine and I said, "Oh my God, you're absolutely right.
Hmm.
She's doing this on purpose.
Damn.
This, I can't." And Christina picked that up from a subtle, almost cruel smile that she saw on this lady's face.
You don't say.
That's
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah.
So you would say, "My God, she's intuitive," but I don't think that's intuition. I think that's a good IQ and highly perceptive,
Mhm.
highly perceptive. And she had to become that way as a survival strategy as a child, and to this day. And again, she's always amazes me that how she can do that.
That's quite something. Really,
Mhm.
just picking up from that.
So, anyways, that's
Go
my
ahead.
answer to intuitive.
Okay.
Mhm.
I'm
All
not
right.
intuitive because I don't pick up those subtle cues.
But you do
That's the
listen.
only
Yeah.
part. There's more to the story of intuitive, but
Sure.
that's far enough for your show. But there's more to it than I said. But that's a big piece of it.
Well, that's okay.
So
We're gonna have you
I'm
back.
not intuitive because I don't pick up. Now I do pick up strange words, strange tone of voice, things like that make me. I'm sensitive. I go, "That's a strange way to say I'm happy." You know,
Mhm.
that doesn't sound happy to me. that tone of voice as an example.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's what I think we think intuition is, that we say we're intuitive because we don't know what cues we're really picking up. Like I said, a cruel smile or a unusual tone of voice, and we can't recall what is it that I picked up? I don't know, but we always say there's something.
Mm-hmm.
We're not aware what it is, but that's what we're doing, I think, most of the time.
I like that. That is something. What I'd like to explore now with you, Dr. Farmer, and I find this quite fascinating, as this semester, unlike last academic year where I was TAing for your 232s, now we have 335, which is what is that? That would be power and conflict resolution.
Conflict.
That's right. That's right. It's a wonderful course, and I have, as well as the others, have picked up that you have many, many fascinating stories regarding how major events in your lifetime have influenced conflicts of sorts, have made you into the person that you are today. And I would just like to take a moment to maybe for us just to take a look at how some of these stories, which you're going to get into, maybe you can give us one or two, how you give at least myself the idea that you're a man of the people, a people's
Mm-hmm.
champion, that you've looked out for people in all sorts of hairy situations. And I just like to know, like, why is that the case? Why would Dr. Farmer do things like that?
Well, I'm highly sensitive to a sense of disempowerment, of course, because of my vision and my need to count on other people for everything. And I'm highly sensitive to that feeling of disempowerment for myself. And when I see other people being taken advantage of or screwed or harmed in some way, I can see, understand by their behavior, their sense of disempowerment or their sense of hopelessness or helplessness or something. And of course, I personally know how bad that feels.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to help other people. It's their choice as to what they do and where they go. That's up to them. But not to be let out of something because they've been disempowered in a given situation. I also don't believe it's morally right, for us people to allow another person to be harmed and
Mm-hmm.
just say, "Oh well, that's none of my business." I'm sorry. It's not who I am, and that's all that's to it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I certainly understand women not wanting to get some drunken man who's acting really aggressively and weird on a bus and not to want to get in trouble with them. I can understand that. I even agree with it. But at the same time, I find it hard to do nothing, say nothing, take no action, and allow someone else, particularly if a woman, or man, be harmed, intimidated, threatened by a person or a situation. I find it it's just not part of my character or my belief system.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And just to quickly tie into it, I recall a couple of weeks ago you brought up the civil rights movement, right, and how that had a deep impact, on where you were at the time, what was going on, and just given that you're talking about disempowerment, I mean, if you wouldn't mind
Mm-hmm.
just giving us, just linking the two to what you were currently experiencing at the time, and based off what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at the time, this was the 1950s and 60s when I was growing up. I, at the time, did not experience anything related to race relationships. Where I was growing up was a white Anglo-Saxon ghetto in New Jersey. So on a personal level, we had no people of color or anything in my schools.
Mm-hmm.
We were insulated from all of that. But I knew of it. I saw it on TV. I couldn't believe things like that happened. I really couldn't believe it. Like I would see people demonstrating in the South in 1960s,
Mm-hmm.
early 60s in particular, but I see people demonstrate, and I couldn't believe that people would treat one another that way. It was just outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
To see that they would release dogs on men, women, and children and beat them. And it's like the police would beat them with sticks. And it was like, it was inconceivable to me. Why is this happening? Who could reason that this is an okay thing to do?
Mm-hmm.
Who could reason that they have a right to do this? And I knew of a priest, Father Ray Simonette. He must be dead by now. He was a good 10 years older than me, maybe more, young. And actually, one of the things about Father Simonette was wonderful. He looked like a football player. He was about 6'4" and about 250 or more pounds. He looked like a football player. He was a big, strong, imposing man, and absolutely gentle. And he was a priest and actually got in trouble with the Catholic Church because he took action. He went to the South and he demonstrated passively. And he let himself get beat, hit, etc., but it did not react, did not fight back, etc. And I just thought that was amazingly wonderful. And he moved into the Paterson, New Jersey, which was 45 minutes from where I live. And they had a large black ghetto there. And it was a very unpleasant place to live,
Mm-hmm.
dangerous, not well kept. And he had a church there, and he was trying to get voting rights for the people of Paterson,
Mm-hmm.
black, white, blue, or green, everybody, but he was working in that ghetto area. And he asked me if I would help him. And I would have done anything for Father Simonette. I had so much admiration for him. The biggest admiration I had was how big and strong he was and how gentle he was at the same time. Like I found that very appealing. Like this is a true kind. He's not kind because he's little or wimpy, or he's kind because it's the right thing to do. He doesn't have to be kind. He believes in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I went down and so do you want me to tell you one of my stories or not?
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
I think you want to tell us too.
No, I like to tell my stories.
Go for it, Dr. Farmer.
So, of course, people know I don't see well. So I went down. So he had a group of about half white and half black young teenagers. I was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I was around 15. I don't remember exactly. Something half white and half black. And he wanted us knocking on doors, handing out a little pamphlet, and just announcing to everybody in the ghetto that there was a meeting coming up. I don't remember it's too long, but let's say there was a meeting in the church basement next Sunday night or Friday night or something. And we were inviting everybody to come to the meeting so that we could prepare to get everybody registered for voting because there was a vote coming up. So we were to go door to door and do this. So Father Simonette saw me there, but then he decided he didn't want me going. It turned out there were 3 people at the end, and everybody went out in twos. Nobody went out alone. There's always one person knocking at the door and one person back from the door, so that if there was trouble, you would always have somebody to run for help or something. So it ended up to be 3 people, And with my bad eyesight, he certainly wasn't going to let me go alone.
Mm-hmm.
So he put me up with these other two students. So there were three of us. So we went out together with these pamphlets for about a block. But I felt like this is crap. This is crap. I'm really what I might as well not be here. I'm the guy left in the street while the other two people go to the door. Why the hell am I here? So by the end of that block, I said to the other two people, give me some of those. I said, I'm going around the corner and do that other block myself.
Mm-hmm.
The people said, I don't think Father Simonette wants you doing that. And I said, screw them. I'm not here to do nothing. So I went around the block and started handing out pamphlets.
Nice.
And got to the door of a young 16-year-old black girl and started to think this is okay. And so she and I spent like half an hour talking together. So when the other people, yes, I was trying to pick up this girl. So it would have been, by the way,
Knew
a
it.
suicidal act had it happened. I am sure I would have been killed. Anyways, then I went on, but I was very much delayed. So the other people got back and they said to Father Simonette, he said, oh, where's Tim? And they told him what I did and he got scared. And he sent them out to find me right away. Go find him. Don't leave. He's not to be out there alone. Go find him. Finally, they found me and I got back and he took one look at me and he just said, trying to pick up girls, weren't you? And I said, yes, I was.
I love
And
that.
he laughed and laughed and laughed. He thought that was so funny. I don't know how he knew it. I don't know how he saw it. Maybe I looked guilty. I don't know what happened, but that's such a funny story to be even 50 years later, 60 years later, almost 60 years later.
Sounds
I
like
still remember that. And I remember him laughing. But he was worried when I was alone. He was. It was getting dark. Night was coming now, and he was worried.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my social commitment.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. It sounds
Mhm.
like the good father was a pretty perceptive fellow himself, eh?
Yes, he was. Yeah, yeah. And he knew me.
Yeah.
He knew me.
Oh, that's good. Well, Dr. Farmer, thank you for sharing that and just taking the moment to explore that and getting personal and with the
Mhm.
story. It's just I just find it very interesting to know how, I mean, everything in a sense is interrelated. You know, where we're coming from with our experiences, what we've gone through,
Mhm.
major events, you know, throughout society, and here we are now, just sharing it. So we
Mhm.
just wanted to thank you for that. I think we're going to be closing soon, but just before we get there, Dr. Farmer, Timmy, Timothy, which
Oh,
one do you
Timmy.
prefer? Not Timmy. Why not Timmy?
You want me to tell my Timmy story?
I think, well,
Yes,
yeah, I think you
yes,
should.
we
I
do.
think you should.
Well, at the beginning of every class, students, of course, want to know what to call me, and I announce that you can call me many things. You may call me Dr. Farmer. You may call me Professor or Prof. You may call me Tim, but you may not call me Timothy or Timmy. If Timothy is my name, but it's what my mother called me when I was in trouble.
Oh.
Timothy, come to the kitchen. I knew I had done something and I had just gotten caught for it. Often I didn't know which one I was caught for, but I knew I was caught for something because it was Timothy. That was the official "you're in trouble" sound. And it can't be Timmy because that's what my wife calls me on Saturday night when I'm going to get lucky.
Oh
Are you
boy.
going to bed?
Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay, a bit
So
spicy
those
there.
are the two you can't call me.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But I actually just had an idea for the episode. Would you be comfortable with it if we call this episode Saturday Nights with Timmy, aka Dr. Farmer?
Fine with me. Fine with me. I don't mind.
I love it. I love it. Oh boy.
That's great. That is
Fantastic.
great.
All right. So Dr. Farmer.
Does that mean I'm going to get screwed here somehow?
No. Not one bit. Not one bit. Don't worry.
Okay.
You've always had our back, as a professor, a teacher, a mentor, a friend, and we have your back here. And again,
Yeah,
we thank you.
very much. Yes.
That's it. All right, guys. So, Dr. Farmer, I do believe you have some concluding words for us. Actually,
Yes, but I'm sorry, but I told you would need to remind me.
oh yes, but I'll tell you what, before we get there, I do believe Luca has one more question to ask you.
Oh.
Oh.
One last question. What would be one piece of advice you give people regarding like communication and dealing with conflict?
Good question.
Ask the question one more time, please.
What would be one piece of advice you'd give people regarding communication and also dealing with conflict?
Be patient and empathetic.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every situation, your opposing people, your opposition has a point. They almost always have a truth. It may not be your truth, may not be one you recognize right off the bat, but underneath it all, there is a truth. And you need to be empathetic and patient and try to understand their truth. That doesn't mean their truth is better than yours, more important than yours, but you're going to have conflict if you can't understand it. First, you have to understand their truth. That will help avoid tremendous amounts of conflict.
And what is the number one way of getting there, Dr. Farmer? And I'm leaning into this because there's one tip that you tell all your students to do. So
I tell all my students 100 times, ask questions.
Yeah.
Stop thinking you know the damn answer. Ask questions. So if somebody says something, instead of saying, you're insulting me, say, I don't understand what you mean by that. Or I don't understand that point. Find out what's behind their comment. Don't assume you know. Don't be sure you know. Or even if you think I don't know, well, all the more reason. Ask questions. That will show patience and empathy. And the questions are real. They're not trick questions. It's a real, I don't understand what you mean by that. You want to know.
very nice.
Awesome. Great advice. All right. So the outro line that we would like you to say, I will remind you, is we are ALFA Relations, driving
We're
change
Alpha.
forward.
Wait a minute. We are Alpha something?
We are
Relation?
ALFA Relations,
We are Alpha Relations.
driving change forward.
We are Alpha Relations, driving change forward.
Yes.
We are Alpha Relations, driving change forward.
Yeah.
I am your father.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Good.